Welcome back. One summer, Thorolf Skallagrim's son made ready to go trading. He planned to go to Iceland and see his father, and did so. He had been away for a long time and took a great amount of wealth and many precious things with him. When he was ready to leave, he went to see King Eric. At their parting, Eric presented Thorolf with an axe, saying he wanted Skallagrim to have it. The axe was crescent-shaped, large and inlaid with gold, and its hilt was plated with silver, a splendid piece of work. Thorolf set off when his ship was ready, and he had a smooth journey, arriving Borgafjord, where he went straight to his father's house. It was a joyful reunion. Skallagrim went with Thorolf to the ship and had it brought ashore. Then Thorolf and 11 of his men went to Borg. When he was in Skallagrim's house, he passed on King Eric's greeting and presented him with the axe that the king had sent. Skallagrim took the axe, held it up, and inspected it for a while without speaking, then hung it above his bed. At Borg one day in the autumn, Skallagrim had a large number of oxen driven to his farm to be slaughtered. He had 2 of them tethered up against the wall, with their heads together, and took a large slab of rock and placed it under their necks. Then he went up to them with his axe king's gift and struck one blow at both oxen. It chopped off their heads, but it went right through and struck the stone, and the mount broke completely and the blade shattered. Skallagrim inspected the edge without saying a word, then went into the fire room, climbed up on a bench, and put the axe on the rafters above the door, where it was left that winter. In the spring, Thorolf announced that he had planned to go abroad that summer. Skallagrim tried to discourage him, reminding him that it is better to ride a whole wagon home. Certainly you have made an illustrious journey, he said, but there is a saying. The more journeys you make, the more directions they take. You can have as much wealth from here as you think you need to show your stature. Thorolf replied that he still wanted to make a journey, and I have some pressing reasons for going. When I come to Iceland for a second time, I will settle down here. Asgard, your foster daughter, will go with me to meet her father. He asked me to arrange this when I was leaving Norway. Skallagrim said it was up to him to decide, but I have an intuition that if we part now, we will never meet again. Then Thorolf went to his ship and made it ready. When he was fully prepared, they moved the ship out to Digranes and lay there waiting for a favorable wind. Asgard went on the ship with him. Before Thorolf left Borg, Skallagrim went up and took down the axe, the gift from the king, from the rafters above the door. The handle was black with soot, and the axe had gone rusty. Skallagrim inspected the edge, then handed it to Thorolf, speaking this verse. Many flaws lie in the edge of the fearsome wound-binder. I own a feeble tree feller. There is vile treachery in this axe. Hand this blunt crescent back with its sooty shaft. I had no use for it. Such was the gift from the king. One summer, while Thorolf was abroad and Skallagrim lived at Borg, a trading ship arrived in Borgafjord from Norway. Trading ships would be given shore berths, then in many places, in rivers or the mouths of streams or in channels. There was a man named Ketil, whose nickname was Ketilblunt, snooze, who owned the ship. He was a Norwegian of a great family and wealthy. His son, Geir, had come of age by then and was on the ship with him. Ketil intended to settle in Iceland. He arrived late in the summer. Skallagrim knew all about his background and invited Ketil to stay with him, together with all his travelling companions. Ketil accepted the offer and spent the winter with Skallagrim. That winter, Ketil's son Geir asked for the hand of Thorun, Skallagrim's daughter, and the match was settled. He married her. The following spring, Skallagrim offered Ketil some land to settle on up from where Olaf had settled, along the river Vita, between the Flokkadal and Reykjadal estuaries, and all the tongue of land between them as far as Uradsgil, and all the head of Flokkadal valley. Ketil lived at Thrandelholt, while Geir lived at Geirshild, and had another farm at Upper Reykir. He was called Geir the Wealthy. His sons were named Blunt Ketil, Thorgil Blunt, and Thorod Risablund, who lived at Risser. Skallagrim took a great delight in trials of strength and games, and liked talking about them. Ball games were common in those days, and there were plenty of strong men in the district at this time. None of them could match Skallagrim in strength, even though he was fairly advanced in age by then. Thord, Grani's son from Granistatter, was a promising young man, and was very fond of Egil, Skallagrim's son. Egil was a king wrestler. He was impetuous and quick-tempered, and everyone was aware that they had to teach their sons to give in to him. A ball game was arranged early in winter on the plains by the river Frita, and crowds of people came to it from all over the district. Many of Skallagrim's men attended, and Thord Granison was their leader. Egil asked Thord if he could go to the game with him. He was in his 7th year then. Thord let him and seated Egil behind him when he rode there. When they reached the games meeting, the players were divided up into teams. A lot of small boys were there as well, and they formed teams to play their own games. Egil was paired against a boy called Grim, the son of Heg from Hegstatter. Grim was 10 or 11 years old and strong for his age. When they started playing the game, Egil proved to be weaker than Grim, who showed off his strength as much as he could. Egil lost his temper, wielded the bat, and struck Grim, who seized him and dashed him to the ground roughly, warning him that he would suffer for it if he did not learn how to behave. When Egil got back on his feet, he left the game, and the boys jeered at him. Egil went to see Thord Granason and told him what had happened. Thord said, "I'll go with you, and we'll take our revenge." Thord handed Egil an axe he had been holding, a common type of weapon in those days. They walked over to where the boys were playing their game. Grim had caught the ball and was running with the other boys chasing him. Egil ran up to Grim and drove the axe into his head, right through to the brain. Then Egil and Thord walked away to their people. The people from Mirar seized their weapons, and so did the others. Ole Fjalti rushed to join the people from Borg with his men. Theirs was a much larger group, and at that the two sides parted. As a result, a quarrel developed between Olaf and Heg. They fought a battle at Laxvit by the river Grimsa, where 7 men were killed. Heg received a fatal wound, and his brother Gvig died in the battle. When Egil returned home, Skallagrim seemed indifferent to what had happened, but Bera said he had the makings of a true Viking when he was old enough to be put in command of warships. Then Egil spoke this verse. "My mother said I would be bought, a boat with fine oars. Set off with Vikings, stand up on the prow, command the precious craft. Then enter port, kill a man and another." When Egil was 12, he was so big that few grown men were big and strong enough that he could not beat them at games. In the year that he was 12, he spent a lot of time taking part in games. Thord Granason was in his 20th year then, and strong too. That winter, Egil and Thord often took sides together in games against Skallagrim. Once during the winter, there was a ball game at Borg in Sandvik to the south. Egil and Thord played against Skallagrim, who grew tired, and they came off better. But that evening, after sunset, Egil and Thord began losing. Skallagrim was filled with such strength that he seized Thord and dashed him to the ground so fiercely that he was crushed by the blow and died on the spot. Then he seized Egil. Skallagrim had a servant woman named Thorgir Brak, who had fostered Egil when he was a child. She was an imposing woman, as strong as a man and well versed in the magic arts. Brak said, "You're attacking your own son like a mad beast, Skallagrim." Skallagrim let Egil go, but went for her instead. She fled, with Skallagrim in pursuit. They came to the shore at the end of Digranes, and she ran off the edge of the cliff and swam away. Skallagrim threw a huge boulder after her, which struck her between the shoulder blades. Neither the woman nor the boulder ever came up afterwards. That spot is now called Brekkarsund, Breck Sound. Later that evening, when they returned to Borg, Egil was furious. By the time Skallagrim and the other members of the household sat down at the table, Egil had not come to his seat. Then he walked into the room and went over to Skallagrim's favourite, a man who was in charge of the workers and ran the farm with him. Egil killed him with a single blow, then went to his seat. Skallagrim did not mention the matter, and it was let rest afterwards. But father and son did not speak to each other, neither kind nor unkind words, and so it remained through the winter. The next summer Thorolf returned, and was recounted earlier. After spending the winter in Iceland, he prepared a ship in Brekkusund in the spring. One day, when Thorolf was on the point of setting sail, Egil went to see his father and asked him to equip him for a journey. "I want to go abroad with Thorolf," he said. Skallagrim asked if he had discussed the matter with Thorolf. Egil said he had not, so Skallagrim told him to do so first of all. When Egil raised the subject, Thorolf said, "There is no chance that I would take you away with me, if your own father doesn't feel he can manage you in his house. I can't feel confident about taking you abroad with me, because you won't get away with acting there the way you do here." "In that case," said Egil, "perhaps neither of us will go." That night a fierce storm broke out, a southwesterly gale. When it was dark and the tide was at its highest, Egil went down to where the ship lay, went aboard, and walked around the awnings. He chopped through all the anchor ropes on the seaward side of the ship. Then he rushed to the gangway, pushed it out to sea, and cut the moorings fastening the ship to land. The ship drifted out into the fjord. When Thorolf and his men realized that the ship was adrift, they jumped in a boat, but it was much too windy for them to be able to do anything. The ship drifted over to Andakil and onto the spits there, while Egil went back to Borg. When it became known, most people condemned the trick that Egil had played, but he answered that he would not hesitate to cause Thorolf more trouble and damage if he refused to take him away. Other people intervened in their quarrel, and in the end Thorolf took Egil abroad with him that summer. On reaching his ship, Thorolf took the axe that Skallagrim had given to him and threw it overboard into deep water, so that it never came up again. Thorolf set off that summer and had a smooth passage, making land at Hordaland and heading north to Sognafjord. There they heard the news that Brunwulf had died from an illness during the winter, and that his sons had shared out his inheritance among them. Thord had taken Aurland, the farm where his father had lived. He had sworn allegiance to the king and taken charge of his lands on his behalf. Thord had a daughter named Randveig, whose children were Thord and Helgi. Thord the younger also had a daughter named Randveig, the mother of Ingarid, whom King Olaf married. Helgi's son was Brunwulf, the father of Sirk from Sognafjord and Svein. Bjork received another farm, a good and valuable one, and because he did not swear allegiance to the king, people called him Bjorn the landowner. He was a man of considerable wealth and power. After Thorolf landed, he went straight to see Bjorn, bringing his daughter Asgard to the house with him. It was a joyful reunion. Asgard was a fine and accomplished woman, wise and knowledgeable. Thorolf went to see King Eirik. When they met, Thorolf delivered a greeting to him from Skallagrim, saying that he had been grateful for the gift the king had sent him, and presented him with a long ship's sail that he told Skallagrim had sent. King Eirik was pleased with the gift and asked Thorolf to stay with him for the winter. Thorolf thanked the king for his offer, but "I must go and see Thorir first. I have some pressing business to attend with him." Then Thorolf went to see Thorir, as he had said, and was warmly received there. Thorir asked Thorolf to stay with him. Thorolf told him he would accept the offer, "And there is a man with me who will stay wherever I do. He is my brother, and has never been away from home before, so he needs me to keep an eye on him." Thorir said that Thorolf was free to have more men with him if he wanted. "We regard it as an asset to have your brother if he's anything like you." Thorolf went to his ship and had it pulled ashore and taken care of. Then he and Egil went to stay with Thorir. Thorir had a son named Armbjorn, who was somewhat older than Egil. Armbjorn was already an assertive character at an early age and highly accomplished. Egil sought Armbjorn's friendship and followed him around everywhere. But relations between the two brothers, Thorolf and Egil, were rather strained. Thorolf Skallagrim's son asked Thorir what he would think if he asked for the hand of his niece Asgard in marriage. Thorir answered favourably and said he would support him. Then Thorolf went north to Sognafjord with a fine band of men and reached Bjorn's house. He was welcomed warmly there, and Bjorn invited him to stay as long as he wanted. Thorolf soon raised the matter with Bjorn and asked to marry his daughter Asgard. Bjorn took the proposal favourably, and it was easily settled, with the result that the pledges were made then and there, and the date was set for the wedding, which was to be held at Bjorn's farm in the autumn. Thorolf went back to Thorir and told him the news of his journey. Thorir was pleased that the marriage had been arranged. When the date came round for Thorolf to attend the wedding feast, he asked people to join him, inviting Thorir and Arnbjorn first, with their farm hands and more prominent tenants, a large party of worthy men. Just before the date when Thorolf was supposed to leave home, when his party had already arrived to accompany him, Egil fell ill and was unable to join them. Thorolf and his men had a large, well-equipped longship and proceeded on their journey as planned. Takk skal du ha.